Hi, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much for checking in. I'm Candice Dorman, coming to you with a really exciting sales training that I have been really looking forward to. So why don't we just jump right in? So, because we've got some really good stuff here. You will see my good friend, one of my oldest friends, Paul Cebulak, has joined us today. I asked him if he would come in and talk to me about sales, right? It's a thing that a lot of people get a little bit weary about and get a little bit standoffish about. But if your business isn't making money, like, is it a real business? I don't know. So I thought that he could come on and talk to us. Oops, my bad. So I asked him to come on and talk to us specifically for my entrepreneur friends who are selling a service or particularly their expertise. So welcome, Paul. Thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Candice. Good morning, everybody watching out there in cyber world.
In the world, right? I like to think of it. I think of myself as being in the world, right? Like one day. So let's do a quick introduction. So Paul, I'm reading it here so I get all the details in, right? Paul Cebulak is a startup leader and mentor. He was pre and post IPO at Yelp, where he helped grow the company from 35 people to 6,000 employees. There, he opened the first satellite office in New York City and then relocated to Australia to launch various Asia Pacific markets. That's a mouthful. He has worked and consulted for various tech and marketplace startups, including in the legal and wine tech spaces. Currently, he's VP of Sales and Client Success at Confident Cannabis, a business-to-business lab testing and trade platform for the legal cannabis market. Today, he lives in San Francisco while his heart is in New Orleans. Paul, thank you so much for being here.
Of course, Candice, and thanks for the opportunity. Great to kind of get a platform here, connect with people, and perhaps give a tip or two that people can take away from our chat here. I will say one thing to piggyback, Candice. I might be one of your older friends. You are actually my first friend in high school. The true story. My dad and I came to visit. We were like, "Hey, is this place right?" You were literally the first person I befriended, and when my dad and I left, we would talk about Candice, and they're like, "Oh yeah, the tall girl, right?" Like, yep, that's the one. Yeah. So I appreciate you keeping up the relationship.
Of course.
Just like a couple years later.
Right, just a couple years, a couple grays, right? A couple kids, all the things, right?
Something like that.
Yes, I remember that trip. Paul and I went to boarding school, and Paul is from Phoenix and I'm from New York, and both of us showing up in Wallingford, Connecticut. It was a thing. So it was really good to know that on that first day I was lucky enough to meet Paul and a couple other people that are still near and dear to my heart from, I don't know, 1997, April of 1997. Like, it's amazing. I love it.
Fate-filled year.
I love it. So what's going to happen is I am going to go out on a ledge right now and just say I turned off the AC in my office so that I could protect the integrity of the sound, but I might not be able to handle this heat. We are in the middle of a heat wave here in Connecticut. So if you hear a little bit of hum, I'm going to apologize right now, but I won't make it through the session if I don't turn it back on. Okay,
totally understandable.
Right? But I like to just put it out there, put the truth out there. So why don't we launch in? I'm going to turn it over to you, Paul, in just 1 second. I just want to remind folks that we are talking about sales this morning, and particularly sales of your expertise. I don't want folks to be afraid of sales, and I don't even want to use the language I want to stop using the language around salesy, right? Like, nobody's ever said salesy in a good way, but it's so important for us as entrepreneurs. If you want to do more good, serve more people, and make money so that you can continue to do that, right? Like so many of us are doing, our business is based around our passion, and it's something that we love to do. And basically we would do it for free, right? You eat, sleep, and dream about this passion that you have. And so it's so easy for you to give it away for free. But imagine how much more time and effort and energy you could put into it if your business was actually making money, right? If you didn't have to have a part-time job to support your passion job, if you didn't have to reduce the amount of hours that you were doing your passion business because you actually needed to work to pay your bills, right? Like it is noble to make enough money to pay your bills. And I want that for you, because the more you feel comfortable and confident that you can take care of your family, the more people you can actually serve. So let's get out of the mindset of sales is hard and sales is schmarmy and all of the things that we say about sales. And remember that sales is a thing that's going to help you push your business forward so that you can do the thing that you want to do. So with that, Paul, let's launch right in. Okay.
Great. Thanks for the tee up there. Cool. So I'm just going to start just a little bit of a little bit of a flashback. We've already gotten in the Wayback Machine here, but just wanted to show everybody, my former self. So this is a snapshot of me, I think in 2008 in New York City. So this fellow with the full head of hair on the phone alongside 8 of his closest colleagues. This was early on in my sales career. It was about 8 or 9 months after I started in a frontline sales role, working with small and medium-sized businesses, selling advertising, selling other marketing services, what have you. We were in New York City on September 15th, 2008, which, if you're a bit of a news buff, current events buff, history buff, that was the day that Lehman Brothers went under, when effectively the global financial world just came crashing down on our heads. And needless to say, really exciting time, really scary time for some, for most, but this is essentially the first sales gig I ever had. Prior to this, I was a teacher. I was a waiter. Before that, I studied French and political science, which hence being the waiter. But I wound up in this really cool company with an infrastructure of people that really taught me how to sell inside, sell outside, sell in different configurations. But I love this photo because it really takes me back to just how much we were hustling and just kind of figuring out our craft, frankly. Fast forward a little bit. This is, I believe, probably 5 or 6 years later, in San Francisco, when I had one of my larger teams, different capacity. Here I'm in management, which my joke is that's what management does to you in terms of hair and style, what have you. So anyway, we were doing kind of a cool end of month, end of quarter, all black, kind of cool club vibe. So not everyone got the memo, but really fun times. And at the largest that I've had, my organizations have been 10 or 11 frontline managers, and then each team having 10 or 11 frontline salespeople of various types. And so I'm saying this in order just to say I've thought a lot about sales. I think a lot about repeatable processes. I think a lot about how do we get people trained up, comfortable to be able to close business. It's such a crucial skill. And interestingly, I think one of the most important things I'd love to impart upon people, but interestingly for me, I think there's a way to really view the world as pretty much everything is sales. Pretty much everything is a interaction where there's some type of end, and it's not to make it hollow, or it's not to make it opportunistic or transactional. It's just that's how the world works, is that business is business. And so first and foremost, I just want to really drive home that sales don't have to be icky. That whole image of like the kind of uncomfortable used car salesman thing, that is like a very, very particular type of sales that I believe, frankly, is some in some ways kind of going away because people are attuned to that stuff. The fact of the matter is most sales are kind of boring. It's just day-to-day business. It's just how we go through life. And it could be, you going to one sushi restaurant over the next. It could be you choosing a hairdresser. It's us choosing an accountant. But sales don't have to be icky. And that's a good thing, because icky things are not things we want to do. I used to have this what is now a tired metaphor of sales as dating, and you get a lot of mileage out of it. The way I would think about it is, you think about everything as an interpersonal relationship, and there's some really kind of in retrospect kind of lazy metaphors you can make. I've updated this to be a little bit more like work friendly, frankly a little bit less. Dating is kind of a charged concept nowadays. So what I've updated this to be is business is relationships. And I think everybody can agree with that. That said, if we do go back to dating apps, or back when it was okay to talk to people at bars, which people don't do in most cities nowadays, And then, figuring out how to take someone out to a cup of coffee, asking them for a second date, maybe you guys become a thing afterwards. That's no different than what we do in business. It's, making a cold call, making an initial connection. Cold call can be a phone call, but it can be talking to somebody at a trade show. It could be getting introduced to a friend. Building rapport. That's simply just, hey, what commonality do we have? Do I understand your situation? Do you understand mine? Are we on the same wavelength? Qualifying just means, kind of understanding someone's situation, taking somebody, learning what's important to them, learning what they've tried, what their current position is. Pitching, get the message out there. Here's what it looks like to, to work with me to use my service. And obviously then closing the deal, entering into that more formal relationship. There are analogs to this kind of everywhere in life. And so needless to say, business is relationships, and a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is just how do we just make the most of those types of relationships? How do we kick them off? How do we process, make a process of them? So here I've got a few people. I posit, I argue that everybody is effectively a salesperson in some way, shape, or form. A couple of these people are obviously more obviously salespeople. Gwyneth's, selling all sorts of interesting new agey products. Your personal trainer has an agenda to make sure that you're buying their services, buying this pack. Maybe you're referring them out. Oprah, one of the greatest salespeople of all time. And I don't mean Oprah's favorite things. I mean Oprah in terms of the brand, in terms of watching her show. My mom was the biggest Oprah fan for a few decades. And that was really her buying into her messaging, and she as a result would consume all those ad products that they were selling. And you are a salesperson. Everybody on this call presumably has some type of offering that you're looking to get out into the world, and the more we can do to demystify that and not make it a kind of a uncomfortable term, I think the better. So start to think about, hey, as a salesperson, what does that mean? What type of salesperson do you want to be? Because obviously, we've got people up here, we've got people out in the world, some of which do great work, some of which, maybe we don't identify with as much.
That idea that we're all salespeople, I think, especially for entrepreneurs, it's very easy to think that like when you get a sales team, right? But as the owner and leader of your business, you are the sales team. Even after you get big enough to have someone else on your team, if you are not selling your business and your product, then like literally no one else can.
I'd say on the contrary, yeah, you're exactly right, Ken. On the contrary, like a solo entrepreneur, a founder, someone who starts a business, you are the most important salesperson because you're the one who essentially figures out the initial conversation, figures out the selling points, the proof points. You're the ones that invest in the offering. You're the one that figures out, hey, how is this positioned? As you're hiring salespeople, guess what? A salesperson doesn't figure that stuff out. They take the process you've created and they go ahead and put it out in the world. They can put their own spin on it, but very rarely would just hiring a salesperson mean a magic wand and now it gets sold. So I think it's a really important thing to be mindful of, is that as a founder, you need to take it upon yourself to figure out how to sell something, because no one else is going to care as much, frankly. And this is true in all, I've primarily been in software sales and services sales that are very scalable, or that we aim to make very scalable. One common truth in all literature and all, venture capitalist type, guidance that they give is, it's founders that have to drive that. Founder-led sales is something that's effectively a requirement for the first couple of years when as you're at this, because no one else is going to care as much. No one else is going to be able to pivot as quickly and kind of adjust your offering to match the market demands.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, great concept.
Founder-led sales. I love it.
Founder-led sales. Okay, so now we're going to move
down. If you're watching, write that one down and underline it a lot.
So I want to, just to stay on this, I do want to kind of set the table in terms of what does a modern salesperson actually look like? What do they do? And I find this very comforting. I had somebody impart this upon me early on, is that the paradox of the modern salesperson, it's not, it's that you don't actually do much selling. In another era, you think of, some traveling salesman going door to door, selling encyclopedias. Hello is the man or the woman of the house home, like that whole kind of cheesy thing. We're not living in that world nowadays. Most notably, it's because we have a supercomputer in our pockets at all time. We literally have the collective conscience and knowledge of the entire planet available to us at any time. How does it manifest itself otherwise? You can go to YouTube and figure out how to learn how to do anything practically, right? You can look up reviews and unboxings, and we can go to TripAdvisor or Yelp or elsewhere and read about a particular service. We can get referrals from friends. We can go to a Facebook group and ask for guidance. So there's not a lot of selling necessary in the very traditional sense. The paradox of the modern salesperson is that the modern salesperson effectively has to do three things. One, you have to build some trust and credibility, okay? Two, you've got to assess needs, and that's to say, help someone else assess their own needs. And three, modern salesperson articulates how they can help the right customer and why their offering is potentially superior there. I'm gonna double click into all three of these right now. So first, the modern salesperson builds trust and credibility. And so there's a lot to say on this topic, but this is something that I think charismatic people kind of do automatically. Less charismatic people, or people who aren't quite as comfortable, might have to be a little bit more intentional about it. But the idea is you have to show me you know me. One adage in sales is people buy from people they like, and thankfully you can get someone to like you any number of ways. There's a lot of ways to show commonality. There's a lot of ways to build credibility. Hey, I've worked in this field for so much time. Hey, I have 20 clients that look just like you, and by look I mean they're in the same kind of psychographic that you are. Oftentimes this isn't something we have to do per se. It's just something we have to be aware of. Hey, have I built up some trust here? One very tactical thing when I'm dealing with a brand new person to my team is it's just a reminder, it's just a reminder that the more someone talks, the more they trust you. Mm-hmm. And the inverse of that is true. The more you talk, the less someone trusts you. And this is especially important. This is so true, especially before you've built any kind of trust or credibility. And you absolutely believe this. You go to a dinner party and there's somebody who is really great at kind of teeing people up and asking questions. And you're like, wow, I really like that guy. And like really in parentheses, it's, he was a good listener. And like, he just kind of let me tell my bad jokes, and they laughed politely. On the other hand, you go to a dinner party and talk to somebody and they're just sucking up all the oxygen in the room. They're the ones just talking, blabbering. They're bad listeners. Like, yeah, the person's kind of full of themselves. It's one of these truisms. The more someone talks, the more they trust you. And especially at this early stage, when you're building trust or credibility, I recommend just like a fun mechanism for me, again, in my trainings. I'm like, think of yourself as like having a speaking stick. This is a speaking pen, but assume it's a speaking stick. I have a speaking stick. Literally, the longer I talk, it just becomes hot. It becomes like radioactive. I want to throw this to the person I'm speaking to so that they get the speaking stick, and so they start to, de-escalate. So they talk, so they just start to build a little bit of trust. Anyway, building trust and credibility. Yeah,
it's like, it's what I just did right now. Like, people are bursting to say something, and you like gotta let them talk.
This is something I probably spend more time on than a lot of different topics, because it's really important in sales. It's, this is communications. It's got to be intentional communication, and you have to essentially earn the right. And one way you earn the right is with that trust, credibility, by showing me you know me, by being thoughtful and asking good questions. We'll talk about all this stuff. Anyway, I'm going to jump ahead.
And just a clarifying piece, because I misread it at the beginning on your last slide. The show me you know me is for the person, is for the prospect, right? Not for the, so you want the person you're talking to feel like they know that you know them. Yeah.
So in terms of building trust and credibility, it's just a couple of things, these are just a very quick drive-by-night tactics, just kind of things to keep in mind. One, open-ended questions. And what this is a contrary to is yes or no questions. You think of think of any conversation as a freeway almost. Any kind of yes or no question, there's just a chance to have an off ramp. If any kind of no I give you, I'm just going to get off track. Okay, we're derailed now. Open-ended questions keep us on the highway. We're all driving in the same direction. And so, hey, one open-ended question is, tell me about what you're looking for. That's not a yes or no question, and suddenly I've got to start to communicate if I'm the prospect, if I'm the potential client. Another type of open-ended question, and this could be a list of 600, but I gave a couple just because they're, I think, a little bit different. Hey, what have you tried previously? And then double-clicking into that, what did you like? What didn't you like about that? It's so simple, it's so straightforward, but really getting away from anything where you can just shut down the conversation. Maybe something doesn't make sense. give people a platform, give them space to speak. So open-ended questions are crucial, especially at this early stage, as you're understanding where someone's at. And again, we're getting them to talk. The other thing to keep in mind is social proof is so powerful. A lot of ways to frame this, but I think one way we can build trust, build credibility, is invoke the fact that you know what you're talking about. And it's not because you say you do, it's because you're speaking on behalf of your clients. And so one extremely valuable mechanism here is a lot of my customers or a lot of my clients or so many of the clients I work with speak to the fact that you swim in this pool. A lot of my customers have said they have a hard time balancing marketing spend versus return on investment. How does that compare to your situation? Okay, tell me more about that. Like what have you specifically tried? Look at me tying up number one and number two. And another way to invoke social proof is, you know what? That reminds me of another client that was just talking to me. And then suddenly, rather than asking questions, interrogating, rather than asking yes or no questions, you're suddenly kind of invoking the fact that you're kind of familiar with this topic someone's talking about. So anyway, two easy ways to build trust and credibility: open-ended questions and just invoking social proof. And in particular, I love that tag phrase of a lot of my customers, a lot of clients, a lot of people I work with. Most people when they get started with me, they think of this, and suddenly it's not your word versus someone else's. You're invoking what other people that look just like my prospect think. It also creates a safe space, by the way, too, because suddenly you're not on a if you disagree, or if you're out on a limb, suddenly it's like, well, hold on, a lot of my customers do this, so it kind of de-escalates any kind of pressure, any oppositional posturing. Anyway, I'm gonna keep rolling. Second bit to a modern salesperson that of what they do is he or she, they assess needs, and so you have to ask the right type of questions, right? The purpose here is a couple of things. The right questions, we need to guard time, and that's a business person's most valuable asset. By asking the right questions, you force a prospect to think through something they may not have yet considered. This is so crucial. I think sometimes, especially when we're early on, when we're frankly desperate to just close a damn deal, like you almost, you're like, I'll talk to anybody, I'll sell to anybody. It's actually really, really, really important to be good at this, to really get a prospect to want to connect with you and to continue to work with you, rather than just kind of a quick and easy thing. You want to, frankly, to have them themselves ask the questions that they maybe haven't considered before. This could come out as, well, hey, so it's right now. I'm gonna timestamp this. It's June 2021. You mentioned that you are working with 6 clients today. You sell into 6 beauty salons. How many would you like to be in by the end of the year, by December 2021? I'll tell you what, a lot of people I talk to haven't thought that far out, because guess what? Small business is small business, and
Yes.
I'm trying to keep the doors open this month. You're asking about December's like that's so like after Christmas. In January is like after Christmas, right? It's really important to slow down and start to, hey, even if this person's not necessarily thought about this, suddenly we've changed the conversation to, let's get out of this moment. Hey, we're actually talking about serious business here. What do things look like 6 months out? And this, I think, is one of the most powerful things a modern salesperson can do, is ask the questions that, frankly, someone hasn't gone to the trouble to, or more important, they just haven't had the space to or the time to.
Right.
Okay?
It almost says, Paul, that you believe that I believe that your business is going to be open in 6 months. Let's talk about what it looks like in 6 months. Like, they might not have even had anyone else. They might not have thought about that, right? Like, I feel like really early on in small business, it's almost, I'm just going to get through this month. And if it doesn't work, then I'll shut down and I'll try again, next year or whatever. We're always looking for the escape plan just in case. And to have someone actually position you like they expect to see you in 6 months might be almost over their head. They'd never thought about it before. I love that.
I think that's value. And the fact of the matter is, like, I mean, let's play it out, right? If someone tells you, hey, you know what, we might not actually be around in 30 days unless I close this, unless I don't know, get, open up this new location or something, depending on what the situation is, that may actually change how important a sales conversation this is for you. From my perspective, if I'm talking to 5 different prospects, and one of them, like they're, I mean, this is a real life situation. Like, we're talking constantly in my industry right now. There's a lot of movement. It's very fragmented. Licensing is weird. Cash is king, but also hard to come by, like it is in a lot of industries. If someone's essentially telling you, hey, we're on really uncertain financial footing right now, that may change how doggedly I pursue them versus other businesses that are like, hey, listen, we want 100 new accounts by the end of December. Okay, well, let's talk through that. What does that mean? Well, I've got to add, say, between 15 and 25 each month. Suddenly, okay, now we've got a plan. And now I'm going to probably prioritize that conversation, that prospect over somebody who is having an existential crisis, and it's not, I mean, like, it just is what it is.
This is what it is. Business is business. You might refer them out to a coach.
There you go. I mean, I've got Candice's number, thankfully, and I'm like, hey, talk to Candice, and then like I'll revisit in 6 weeks. And lastly, I think that, just to kind of call it, like, I think it's really important. The modern salesperson filters out that those for which your service or product is not a fit for. And why is that? We go back to number one.
Exactly.
You guard your time. There's the one thing you don't get back in this world, certainly not in business, definitely not in sales, is more time. And so if you can filter out those that don't necessarily fit on their end, perhaps because they haven't asked themselves the tough questions, geez, you're going to be so much better off with the four other prospects that are super dialed in and are actually a great fit.
And I promise you, everyone who is watching this video has had the experience of a not ideal client, right? Because they were in this place where you mentioned before of you just have to get a client, right? You just have to close some sales so that you can make it to next month. And sometimes those quick decisions on your part and not allowing yourself to also be choosy in who you work with costs a lot in the long run.
And in the short run, to be fair, when you're getting started, I may suggest you might not actually know who the right fit is. And so it's okay. And every business goes through this. You may actually, there's this old adage, I think I ripped it off from Mad Men, but it's obviously just out there. Like, you dance with the one who brung you, right? Like somebody who was with you at the very beginning, you kind of stick with them. Guess what? That's false in business. That's false. like you will work with people in your first, whatever period that will not make sense if you are successful in 5 years out. There will be some dogs in the bunch there. Okay. And that's okay.
Leave with the one you came with.
Yeah, exactly. So don't necessarily dance with the one that brung you. Okay. Third piece, and this is what I'm going to drill into further, is the modern salesperson finally articulates the how and the why. So the how, the modern salesperson articulates how they can help the right customer. That's the pitch. Like, hey, here's how my service is going to help you. The modern salesperson articulates why their offering is preferred, and to put another way, why their offering is better or faster or cheaper. And the modern salesperson articulates why their offering is preferred to alternatives. And alternatives could be competitors, so another service out there, another offering, another product, doing something yourself, which is also an alternative. And one thing I think that sometimes people don't necessarily acknowledge is doing nothing at all. That's also a totally reasonable alternative. You can go ahead and, you can hire a person to clean your pool. You can hire a person to do your taxes, or I can do them both myself. And those are very different prospects. And I can make a very strong case for why I want to do neither of those. I don't have a pool, but soon, who knows? But anyway, being able to articulate this is effectively the demo. This is effectively the pitch. You need to be able to convey, well, why would I do this? Because it's better. It's literally higher quality. Because it's faster. It'll save you time. Why is that important? Because it's cheaper. It'll save you money. So anyway, so we're going to spend some time digging into this firstly. Next, I guess in terms of the assessing needs and building trust and credibility, these are big topics, and I think this is something you talk to your coach about. It's something you talk to anybody to listen to you about. Kind of practice. But I want to dig into how do you find your ideal customer profile. So this idea of the right customer. So the right customer, this is a really big topic as well, and so I'm just going to give a quick little germination of an idea. I think it's really, really important in sales early on to fish where the fish are. And this is true all the time, but especially when you're getting started and resources are scarce. Now, what do I mean by this? There is, I think one of the reasons people, sometimes are uneasy about sales, it's just like, where do I start? And there's this kind of horror story of someone puts an old school yellow phone book in front of you, start calling, find somebody. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy, right? You need to be targeted in your efforts. And, there's a couple different ways you can split up the world. I think I think of this as very old school. So on the left-hand side here, I found this great infograph that I thought was just very helpful. Demographic, and I think we all know what demographic means. It can mean, your marital status. It can mean your gender, your location, your age, maybe where you work, credit score, whatever. These kind of objective things that seemingly, supposedly kind of define the world and carve up, the demographic I'm in when I watch basketball, like what ads are being served to me. That's okay. And I think everyone should have, we'll get an idea. But obviously, we're in a world now where we think a lot more about, frankly, differently and rightly about representation, about, just in general, people have various interests. We're also in the internet age. As I said earlier, we've got these supercomputers here. And so guess what? I'm not limited to my geography or my age or my color, thankfully, right? Psychographic is a really powerful mechanism and way to kind of think about the world. And so rather than demographic, meaning demo, people, psychographic, it's thoughts, it's my mentality, it's what I do, it's what I'm interested in, right? And so examples of this could be somebody who is a huge basketball fan, somebody who loves island vacations, someone who likes classical music. I start to look at this, and my wheels start spinning. If I look at this and I say, okay, earns $200K a year, I don't know how to find that person. I can maybe conjecture. I'll tell you what, if someone's an NBA fan, I can think of a few spots around my city where I can go and actually run into them. Mm-hmm. I can certainly think of places online to connect with those people. If someone's into dogs, who's not into dogs, right? Like, I guess there might be some soulless people out there. I guess maybe I'll be allergic. I don't know. But like, if you're into dogs, there's a way to connect with other people who love dogs. If you like a certain breed, oh my goodness, the internet was effectively built for cute dog pics, right? So fish where the fish are. And I think just first and foremost, when it comes to this sort of thing, really get a sense and be open to it, but get a sense of who it is you're actually targeting, what that ideal customer profile is. And it might be less obvious than you think sometimes. And as we're getting started, I think sometimes we can be a little bit quick to make judgments on this. I think this is kind of the flip side of what I was saying previously, where you filter out those that it's not a fit for. Before you've sold anything, you actually don't know who a fit is. And so I encourage you, like, as you've built this out, this is only going to be a product, the psychographic especially, it's only going to be a product of people you actually start to do business with. So kind of be open there, because you may be surprised pleasantly in terms of what your actual ideal customer profile is.
Can people work backwards if they're in the early stage and they have had a few clients, like we were saying, and maybe you find out that some worked better or not, or you know what I mean? That if you psycho analyze them, if you analyze them backwards, could you maybe find commonalities in the initial clients where the work went well versus maybe where it went off the rails?
I think that's crucial, and I think that's where sometimes when you get the demographic argument here on the left, that's where it's like really easy. Hey, it turns out all my clients are between the ages of 30 and 36, and they're female. Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of like in my view, that's kind of the lazy interpretation of that. Yeah, okay, so on surface, on some kind of like academic census level, these clients all look the same. I would argue that there's probably something on the psychographic here that's a little bit more interesting, that suddenly makes for a much, much easier group to tap into. Because again, where are the 30 to 36-year-old females hanging out? Like, gee, like, where aren't they hanging out, right? But on the other hand, if you start to kind of look at it and say, hey, you know what? They all seem to be super active online. Oh, actually, it seems like they've all purchased this specific thing off TikTok. This fill in the blank. I'm speaking to myself here as I just started buying shit on TikTok. but as you kind of work backwards, I think that's exactly it. Mm-hmm. I just tend to think that the psychographic thing tends to be much more interesting because you can do more with it. It's much easier to suddenly say, hey, you know what? If somebody's really into a particular hobby, I can get involved in that. If someone's really interested in if they're involved in business groups, oh, that's really interesting. I'm gonna be a presence in these business groups that are geared towards solo entrepreneurs. Go figure. Like that. That's a very and I imagine there's a lot of variety in terms of the demographic stuff there, but the interest level, suddenly kind of unifies people. And so I think that's a great place to. But absolutely, working backwards is kind of the point there. Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's coming up next, but can you speak to folks who are afraid to do this identifying work, because like we said earlier, when you're early in your stages, it feels like you need to just take whatever work comes to you. Can you talk about the fear of loss by excluding people? It's like a do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would say, especially early on, you don't know what you don't know. And so, um, I'm kind of speaking against myself here, though. It's okay to maybe take on a client where you're maybe taking a flyer, but be critical about it. Hey, was that a good experience? Hey, this
Yeah.
wasn't a typical type of customer that I just brought on board. Okay. If this is a new style of customer. Hey, I've not sold this but like this before. I've not worked with somebody at who is using this for their own business, or I've not worked with somebody who maybe is extremely tech savvy. That's kind of what I do, and so maybe you have to tailor your offering. Well, guess what? That's how products evolve too. And so I would say, on the one hand, be open, but then also have that kind of rear view and have the hindsight to say, hey, what was good about that? What was not so good about it? And how do I want to adjust, if anything? And I think that's especially early on. Don't pretend like you have everything figured out. You don't. And it's only when you start to kind of have a little bit of like backward looking, a little bit of analysis. But I've spent a little bit more time on ideal customer profile than I would like, only because this is a big topic, and I only had this little quick infographic to throw up. I want to keep rolling here. Yeah. Next, I think this is so crucial: defining your process. I want to talk about what that is. So every sales process has a beginning and end, and every sale is in fact a part of a process. And when you start to kind of schematize it, here's just an example of something I took, I believe, from Zendesk Sell, which is a CRM. Each stage of the sales process can be drilled into, picked apart, evaluated, improved. You could literally go in here, hey, how do I get better, or how do I improve my qualification stage, or how do I get better at overcoming objections, which can be scary to some people. Being able to essentially enumerate and delineate a sales process is important, and sometimes is a little more important for like large organizations. I just want everyone to kind of just be thoughtful about that. There are distinct stages and phases that are very transferable from one business to the next. The key I want to highlight here, though, why I want to speak to this process, is that I think one area that people sometimes are surprised to think about is that the first sale often isn't actually for the product or service. It's for time. And so the first sale, it doesn't take place over here at number 6 at closing the deal. It actually takes place over here at finding leads and connecting. Okay, and this is something that I'm going to spend a little bit of time on right now. So often the first sale is not for your product, it's for time. And what you have to convey is a few things. One is, why me? Why me, the potential customer? Why am I any kind of prospect or target for you, right? Next, why you, the potential seller? Why should I be talking to you in particular? Is it easy to learn more? And then finally, am I obligated if I give you a small yes? So just to talk through these quickly. Why me? And so this could be obvious. Sometimes we don't need to answer this overtly. If you're talking to somebody in a trade show because they are looking at a particular service, it's implied that we're all in the same space and that we're essentially in the market. This is the old used car salesman thing, right? Why are car salesmen like that? You walked onto the lot. Like, you by definition have said, hey, I want a car. So just to kind of think about that next time you walk into a used car dealership, and maybe you're just feeling like taking a joyride. I don't think anyone does that. I don't think. Maybe when you're like a kid, I don't know. But if you walk onto the lot, like, you are a prospect. You've signaled, right? So identify that. And if this is the old, if you call somebody up and say you're cold calling, right? If you're calling a particular type of business, it's really good to invoke the fact that I'm calling you because you work in this specific space. If you're reaching out because somebody referred you, hey, so-and-so said I should talk to you because you really value, fill in the blank. You really value, handmade furniture. Just as an example, you have really great taste, and they said you might be interested. Well, there's some implication there, but even if it's not overtly said, you need to be really clear, like, hey, why am I talking to this person? It could just be that, hey, you live in my block. That's okay too. Before we kind of really dial in our process. Why you, the potential seller? This is really important. Like, again, there's a lot of people out there, and one image I want to always drive home for sales teams that I build is depending on the service, you can literally imagine the cost of entry right now, the barrier to entry right now to starting a business is so low. Everybody can do it, right? What separates you from some dude in a garage with a cell phone and a list of phone numbers? Like, I mean, think about that. Literally, somewhere in a garage, somewhere in some relatively cheap place, where like the overhead's very low. Literally, I can pretty much just like make sales calls, for
Or their
example.
living room, right? Everybody's
Living
working
room
from
from the
home.
couch, right?
From
Yeah,
the
totally.
couch.
And so what differentiates you? Well, things that can differentiate. Well, I've been a hairdresser for 25 years, and now I'm going out on my own. Hell, I've been in real estate. I've worked in 6 different real estate firms over, in 3 different geographies. I saw a lot of problems, and I've decided I'm going to go about this my own way with how I'd want to be treated. Suddenly, you're essentially invoking like why you, like what's different about you. Some of this goes into like the kind of elevator pitch, but anyway, so you want to be able to answer those. You don't always necessarily have to hit it right on the nose, but you should be really clear about why this customer and why you. Next, is it easy to learn more? This is really, really crucial. I think I hear a lot of elevator pitches sometimes, and there's a whole lot of info in them. And I'm not really sure about like, okay, so do you want me to sign something? Like, is it like, are we like, am I going to listen to a 90-minute timeshare pitch, or do you just want to have a quick 5-minute chat? Making it really easy to learn more is so crucial. Like, don't make it like I'm signing over my firstborn child sort of thing, right? Like, and be really clear, like, hey, the reason I'm calling or the reason we're talking is I just want to set up an appointment for 10 minutes to see if this is worth exploring further. That's pretty easy, versus, hey, go ahead and go to my Calendly link, choose a time. We can sing, like you can make that very complicated. And I argue, make it as easy as possible. Okay. Like remove that. And then finally, we live in a world where, there's a lot of people competing for time. Am I obligated if I give you a small yes? And by a small yes, I mean, yeah, I'll talk to you. Like, hey, yeah, I'm curious enough. Hey, yeah, I sound like a good potential customer. Yeah, you seem like the relevant person to talk to me about this. Seems pretty easy. Hold on, am I going to be like roped into a whole freaking thing if I say yes? So I think it's also really like make it okay to feel non-committal. Like, hey, if it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make. You almost want to serve it up because then you're filtering out people who don't fit. And so
Right.
I think it's really important to be quick to say, hey, if we determine this doesn't work, no problem, no harm, no foul. Cool.
That is so important because it is so easy to think that you need to get all of your 10 years experience or your all of your experience out on this one call because this is going to be your only chance, right? And so we almost like word vomit all over our potential clients. Sometimes even giving away. I'm looking at my service providers here, my interior designers, my they do like meditation and like those sorts of things, like vision boarding, those kinds of things. You give away all of your service in that first call, and then it's almost like, oh, I don't even need to buy. I already got it, right? Like,
I think that's a whole other thing, right? Is like now we're actually, so it sounds like rather than we're focusing on the first sale, we're almost kind of giving away the farm there.
right.
When in fact, like if the actual relationship is going to be much bigger than that, it's not something you can just convey in a quick phone call. Not to mention, by the way, if any of these are not true, okay, if any of these are not true, you may actually close out. You might actually push off somebody that is actually a great fit for you. So just be mindful of that. Is that if all of these are if I satisfy all these conditions, but it's really hard for me to learn more, honestly, I'm busy. I just don't want to learn about it. I don't want to hear about it. Or if all of these are true, except for this one, because it feels like if I give you a small yes, then it's game over. Like I'm just going to be bombarded with stuff, and you're not going to take no for an answer. Ugh, no, thank you. And so I think it's really, really important just to be aware that we're in a crowded, space for time. And so I think, thinking about this and that my intention here is really be mindful that there are other sales than just someone actually buying your service. And really the first sale oftentimes is for time, in fact. And I think that's really important to think about that because that is a win or a loss as well. All right, we're going to keep rolling here in the interest of time. So the next concept around being a modern salesperson is defining and crucially and practicing your pitch. So quick, a little bit of table setting here. So this is ripped off from Scott Galloway, who's a an NYU marketing professor and also a startup guy. He has described the world as being governed by, you know, by some very large successful companies. And he thinks that all the large successful companies that are on their way or already at $1 trillion, trillion with a T, that they effectively, very effectively, satisfy innate human desires that we have. Okay, and I want to speak to these just for a second because I think it's an interesting framework as you think about your own pitch. So firstly is the brain. The brain is, you know, obviously we want to know things. It's knowledge, it's awareness. The internet is, you know, it kind of speaks to that to some degree. The heart, obviously, this is connecting with people. This is, you know, love. This is relationships. It can be, you know, proximity to friendships, getting time with people, catching up, reading something that makes you feel good. The stomach is probably not surprising. It's about consumption. It's about, oh, I want that. I want to eat it, but maybe I want to own it. I want to buy another house. I want to remodel my bathroom. I want, you know, Thai for dinner tonight. You know, I want jeans that you know, are made of really cool material. Finally, the genitals. This is like, I look sexy. I look attractive to people that I want to look attractive to. This can be, hey, I drive a flashy car. This could be, I wear a really nice suit because I know it's going to make me look great in the photos. All of this to the effect of, in effect, you know, being attractive and kind of signaling to people that, hey, what that means is I'm actually pretty well off in life. I'm actually going to be a great potential mate. Scott Galloway talks really much more colorful details than I will here today. Anyway, so these are the 4 innate desires. I want everyone to kind of think a little bit about that. Like, okay, interesting. So you got these different parts of the body, these different innate desires that that we could potentially satisfy. Well, there are 4 companies that meet them and meet them really well. Google, firstly. Google is in effect like a manifestation of the brain. Their whole mission is to organize the world's knowledge, right? And if, you know, Google's effectively replaced like a higher power in terms of where we find truth nowadays. You know, and so and that's interesting. And like, you know, let me Google that is just so much in the parlance, right? I don't need to overtalk this, but like, there's a real desire there that we're better off. We know more when we have access to this company, right? That's pretty neat. Facebook speaks to the heart. At its core, it's a social network, right? Amongst a lot of other things, but really, you know, what role do they play in the world aside from, you know, maybe weaponizing our own platforms against us and, you know, and destroying democracy. Aside from that, we'll edit that out, Candice. It's really about connecting with people, right? And so it's seeing what your family, your friends are up to. It's getting into affinity groups, right? It's finding that human connection. It's really about the network, right? And, you know, and it branches out into other things, and all these companies branch out in other areas too. But Amazon is all about consumption, right? It's like, hey,
I need it now.
I need it now. I want it in a day. I want a new stand for my laptop. I want new jeans. I want, you know, fill in the blank, groceries. Like, I just want it, and you want it quickly, and you want it. And by the way, I want 100 different choices, and I want that shade of blue, right? So all about consumption and removing all those barriers, right? Finally, Apple, this is, I think, maybe the most kind of interesting one, the genitals. And this is like looking sexy. Like, how is it that this company has squeezed $550 worth of components and sold it to me for $1,200? Mm-hmm. Well, they're really good at what this signals, right? It's like, oh, okay, that person's got the nice phone. Oh, they're the blue bubble, not the green bubble. It's iMessage.
Remember the AirPods? Remember, like, even just the white headphones was enough that people were buying white headphones, and they had their like old Nokias in their pockets.
What was the whole ad campaign of the brightly colored backgrounds, the white headphones? Mm-hmm. This is all about image, and this is again signaling, oh, I want to be cool. Oh, there's a reason Apple spends more money on media than almost any of these other companies, like in terms of the bands, the style, the styling, what it sounds like to pull you know, the box open. That's all very intentional. It's all very intentional, right? And so anyway, why are we talking about these 4 companies? These companies are in effect the big winners kind of in, you know, in this era, these big tech giants. They all embody their given innate desire extremely well. Okay. what I want to insist on everybody here does is think about what is your product, what is your offering satisfy? Which of these desires? Doesn't have to be solely one. It could be a couple, in fact. But think about that and really challenge, how does it actually help with the brain or the heart or the stomach or the genitals? Okay. And you start to do this and you start to kind of think about, hey, what's your narrative? What's your story? What does that mean for your pitch? Because then suddenly you can start to tie everything that every selling point, every component of what makes your offering special to, hey, this is going to, be able to give you better information on pricing. This is going to make you look cooler for your job. It's going to help you look, help you have deeper connections with your friends. It's going to help you potentially, find a mate more quickly, or something else. I'm kind of riffing here, but anyway.
And it helps the business owner identify their business, but it can also help you identify your ideal client, right? Like, part of my business is about sharing knowledge. Any and all knowledge that I have, I figure out how to explain it in a way that other folks can get it without having to spend 20 hours on YouTube, right? And so when I'm talking to people who care about knowledge, right? I'm not talking to people who are thinking about like warm fuzzy things right now. They just want to know how to do something so that they can do the next thing, right? Like that. But if you focus too much on people who don't care about those details, then I'm trying to sell knowledge, right? I'm trying to sell encyclopedias to someone who's not interested in reading, right? Like, and that doesn't make any sense.
So again, minorly provocative kind of framework here that I'm proposing, but the idea is that you give kind of a different, reflect a little bit upon your own offering and how do you position it? Kind of what does it satisfy? And I think it's exciting and meaningful because it starts to answer other questions down the line in terms of how you position yourselves. So that's a nice segue to, there are no new ideas. Everything is all execution. Okay, we are all snowflakes just like everybody else. This is so important, I think, to really. And this is less on the sales side. This is more for me, like on the tech side. I've talked to so many people over the years that everyone's the best, right? This is so different than anything else out there. You need to be really honest with yourself that there are, in fact, no new ideas. So just like a couple of quick examples, just because they're fun to talk about. This on the left is the Rio Carbon 260. This was the best MP3 player out there. I had one. I was really stoked about it. I had one. It did voice memos. It had much more capacity than the iPod. It had this cool wheel. The battery life was amazingly good. Guess what? There were other MP3 players. Guess what? The iPod won the day. And why is that? This was better. It was faster. It was cheaper, if you ask me. But guess what? Like,
I thought it was a blood pressure.
Well, there you go, right? That
doesn't feel very sexy.
circa 2005, go figure. The Apple had nailed the branding and Rio hadn't. Okay, so because Candice's eyes rightly, I think it looks like a blood pressure monitor. Needless to say, like the MP3 player was not a new idea. The iPod was not the first MP3 player. There were many before, just like there were many computers.
Some other little one that had a disc thing.
So many. You had a mini disc thing. Yeah. There were so many, right? On the right-hand side, I don't know if anybody might be dating myself here, but Webvan is one of the two spectacularly documented implosions of the 2000 dot-bomb bubble. And so the other one is pets.com, which is a whole different thing.
Okay.
Webvan.com, though, these guys infected on-demand grocery delivery. Something that today I dare say close to post-pandemic, or as we're kind of rounding the corner on the end of the pandemic, who hasn't had their groceries delivered, or like everything delivered at this point, on demand, more or less on demand, whether it's Uber Eats or Postmates or Amazon Grocery, Amazon Fresh, what have you. Webvan, this idea was a great idea, but guess what? It was all about execution, and they folded spectacularly. These guys had more money than any other startup at the time, and they burned through it in something like a year and a half. Is it because the idea of getting groceries delivered is not sound? No, literally that's what the world's been up to for the last year plus. But it's all about execution. Part of it's timing too, but I dare say execution is really, really cool and really key to nail. And why do I say this? is because of, like, let's remove some ego about how distinct or how separate your idea is, broadly speaking. It's about what you actually do with it. And I argue execution, part of it is actually how you position it. And so to transition, we're going to talk about earning the right now. How we earn the right is practice. And this is, I think, probably the most important thing I convey today. Like, if anything, this is what you underline. It's practice, practice, practice. So here I've got a couple of conversations or a couple of speakers. On the left-hand side, we've got our elevator pitch. And, this is kind of the cliched concept of you literally hop into an elevator. You're super fired up because, hey, this person is officially in a closed space with you. You guys have, say 5, 6, 7 floors to interact if you want to. It's nice to make small talk, but shit, like, maybe you think this person is a potential prospect, and so how do you push your best foot forward in that space? Okay. On the right-hand side, here we've got a politician, specifically beardless Abraham Lincoln, in a painting, doing a stump speech, kind of practicing his key talking points before he was in elected office or early on in his elected life. I posit that in order to be successful, both of these conversations are super practiced. Okay, and we're going to dig into each one right now. The elevator pitch. The elevator pitch is so crucial to get down because it may, in fact, oftentimes be that first sale that we were talking about earlier. But again, the sale is typically here just more time. Hey, we're going to talk more substantively. Okay, I have you in an elevator. We're not going to do any business here. I'm just going to earn the right to take your business card, or I'm just going to earn the right to, hey, you know what? I'll email you tomorrow, and then we can talk a little more substantively once we set up time. So things to keep in mind for an elevator pitch. It's got to be short and sweet. Okay, you've got to focus on the essentials. You've got to be positive and persuasive. Have a clear and easy ask, and then finally practice, practice, practice. So to talk through these, on the short and sweet thing, you literally are time bound here. You should be at the point where you can literally start a timer on your phone and speak for 30 seconds, speak for 60 seconds. Anything more than that, forget about it. Like, this isn't an elevator pitch at this point, right?
Yeah.
You've got to focus on the essentials. And at the flip side of it is you have to remove stuff that's not essential. And this is sometimes hard. Self-editing is really challenging. It's really challenging. And so this is why it's really important to practice this, because you need to get, in a perfect world, you're able to give somebody a 30-minute, walkthrough. The fact of the matter is you get this moment. So what are the 1 or 2 concepts you want to convey? I'd argue just one. Find the one thing the one, really.
Because there's more time. You have more time. If they're right, it makes me think, I keep hearing in my head, what's for me is for me, right? Like, if this is actually going to go somewhere, there will be more time. And so you can afford to only drop one piece of information, because you'll be able to say the rest next time.
Especially because you're going to make it very easy to, like, in terms of the ask, right?
Yeah.
Being positive and persuasive, like, all this is to say is that, like, this is where your kind of enthusiasm comes through, and thankfully, if you're a solo entrepreneur, I hope that you are in this business, in this position, because you are deliberately enthusiastic about what you're up to. But really important just to, like, convey this. You want to transfer enthusiasm. Clear and easy ask. The ask could be, hey, listen, I'd love to give you a call tomorrow just to chat a little bit further. Is it okay if I give you a call tomorrow at 10 a.m.? Great. What's your number? That's a clear and easy ask. I'm going to make it. I'm going to call you. You're not going to call me. Make it as easy as possible. Reduce any kind of friction. Just as for example. But finally, the practice, practice, right? This is a bit of a generational thing. We have this thing, and I'm saying this as an elder millennial. We just, like, don't want to practice stuff. Like, it's just like this thing. Like, we're like, forget it. I'll do it live.
I'm better on the fly.
I'm better on the fly. So am I. I get it.
We're not.
It's really important to practice. It's really so that you earn the right to be on the fly, because you know your stuff down. And that's when you do it on the fly. Okay. And so a couple things to this. I just want to, like, just as an aside, your friends and family here are going to be less helpful, I believe, than you think. Your friends and family love you, and they will encourage you. I think it's much more valuable to find mentors, find a business group, find Candice, find new prospects to actually do this. And you will very quickly do this 10 times, get a sense of, wow, that's a really good elevator pitch, or that was a really good conversation, or wow, I really rambled there and that person got scared off.
Even I have done that before, and I walk away going, crap, right? Like, you forget. It's easy to forget.
a note on this concept of practicing. The reason you practice, the reason you rehearse, the reason you go through the motions is this exchange is rare and fleeting, and you're excited, especially if number 3, you're positive and persuasive. You don't want to think about your word choice. You don't want to think about the content. That's got to be on autopilot. This, like, being in a sales conversation is hard enough because you're reading signals, body language, eye contact. You're changing kind of midstream because like a question comes up that you're not expecting. You want to have all the stuff just on autopilot so you can use your brain and all the rest of you for the hard stuff, which is like reading the room. So this is why I really stress practice on the elevator pitch. Now, the flip side is not stump speech or the pitch or the demo. This is kind of like, hey, here's how I take you through an actual, like demonstration, or really kind of, talk to you more substantively. Here I've got, famous American Tom Hanks rehearsing for an award show. Tom Hanks, America's actor, whatever, seemingly a lovely guy. I'm not suggesting otherwise. For some reason, it sounds like I am. He is lovely, I imagine. He rehearses just like all actors, just like all politicians, just like all leaders. All the best ones rehearse, they practice. And is it because they are insincere? Is it because they're dumb and can't think on their feet? I will argue Tom Hanks probably think on his feet probably better than most. He's a charismatic guy. He's has got so much life experience, right? Why does he practice? It's because it's not about the lines. It's not about the content. That stuff you get down, that's the autopilot stuff. It's everything else. He's the acclaimed actor that he is because the lines are like the first step. It's everything else. It's delivery. It's listening. It's pacing. It's eye contact. It's all that stuff that actually means, that adds up to, oh, this is what it means to communicate with somebody, to transfer my enthusiasm. And so again, there's a generational thing about not practicing that I think is like a millennial thing and maybe younger as well, but not necessarily. I'll just do it on the fly. Put that out the window. This job, and by this job I mean conducting business with people, is hard enough just by being able to convince somebody to give you money for a thing. Take away the randomness or the chance for you frankly phrasing something unclearly. Remove that by just getting this stuff down so you can focus on the hard stuff, which is actually connecting with people. So, and just as kind of a little tangent there, one really key concept I think specifically for a sales conversation, and you'll hear this in political speeches as well. I hear this in another persuasive speech. Is this concept of features and benefits. This is a little bit classic, but if you haven't thought about your own sales pitch, features are things like, hey, this is how this is designed, this is the material, this is how long a certain treatment lasts, what have you. And that's okay. And you'll see this on a lot of tags when you buy a product. You'll see this in terms of an explanation of what a certain class is. What's oftentimes missing from really effective what's oftentimes missing and keeps it from being effective communicative persuasive speech, if you ask me, is the benefit side. And so anytime you talk about a feature, talk about what kind of differentiates you in your pitch or in your demo, give me a so what. If I'm talking about material for this umbrella, highlight the fact that it blocks out the rain and it protects me from sun rays. Like, that's the benefit. Like, why should I care? If you don't do that, then all you're doing is spitting out features at people. It's just product puke, to use kind of a gross term, right? You're just kind of throwing out features. The benefits piece is really where you actually do the selling. It's like, here's how this is going to improve. Hey, you told me at the top of our conversation that you're really time poor. And if you can save 10 minutes per transaction, how much, what number can we put to that? Just as a for example.
That speaks back to your point before, which is that there are no new umbrellas, right? I used to run a daycare. There's so many daycares. The features are almost the given, right? Like, if the umbrella doesn't have an arm, like, how's it going to work? But the benefits are how you stand out from the other people, the other real estate agents. What extra information do you come with? What extra experience do you have that's going to make this whole process for me so much easier? If we run into a house if we end up at a house that has a this is the thing that keeps coming up, the I don't even know because I live in a city. What is it called when you don't have the city sewer? the
Oh, like a septic tank?
septic tank. You see, I'm a city girl. I don't even know what that is, right? But like, I get scared when we go look at a house and they have septic. I'm just like, oh, there's going to be poop in the yard, right? Like,
Right.
how is your experience a benefit to me to use you as a real estate agent? Like, it's the difference between you and every other person in my family who's also a real estate agent.
The cool thing is too, on the benefit side, right? These can be generalized, but specifically, just to kind of dovetail with this, you can tailor it to the customer. The features probably don't change very much. You know, you might not talk about every feature with every single person, but any feature you do talk to deserves a benefit, and that benefit may be different depending on who we're engaging with.
Right.
So anyway,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
have much more on the I don't have much more on the actual pitch, but I do want to just stress like the kind of the takeaway here is practice, practice, practice on elevator pitch, on the demo, the pitch. It's so important, and all the best salespeople, all the best business people do this. They might not talk about it. I'll tell you what. Anybody who says, "Oh, I don't use a script," it's because they have a script, but it's up here because they've already looked at it 1,000 times because they literally went to bed kind of thinking about it. In my experience, all the people who leave the most money on the table, all the people who have the most unrealized potential are like, I am not going to invest on the front end, the time to become an expert at this. And it's just like, geez, why would you waste all the trouble of everything you're building? You get an at bat with somebody and you fumble over your words because you haven't talked to anybody about it more than once. Oh my
Like,
God.
how many of you have walked away and said, oh, I forgot to mention,
Of
I
course.
should have said, oh, I should have meant, they said this thing, I should have said this when they said that, right?
And this
it's
is
because
where
you were trying to remember what to say.
rather than focusing on what's important, which is being present. And that's where like just getting to the point where you're on autopilot with the content is so important so you can focus on the actual hard stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're just a couple more things. We're over on time already, so I will keep this brief. The last little bit on last 2 bits on sales and sales not being icky and kind of things to consider is on the ickiness. Firstly, no's are good. So I think some people out there, I've got family members, for example, who are really, really afraid of rejection. It's like it's a really, and that's okay. Like it can sting, it can hurt to to have someone neg you, right? Like it can like, oh man, that's a real bummer, right? No's in a sales context, no's are very, very good. Okay, now you don't want 100% no's because then your business doesn't go anywhere, but no's are good. And what's not good are no answers. I'm going to show you a very scientific diagram that I created the other day. And so, in effect, you can think about all your sales conversations, all your business conversations where you're pitching something as effectively having one of 3 outcomes. Okay? So the first is a yes, a big emphatic yes. Guess what? This group of people here, you could have talked to them any day of the week. You could have talked to them on a Monday morning, Friday night, on the phone, in person. They're always going to be a fit. They're always going to be a yes. We like these. These make us very, very happy. Okay, great. Congrats. We're going to have this other group of people. They're always going to be a no. You can literally do your absolute best. On paper, everything makes sense. You guys are vibing. You got, everything, it's a perfect match as far as you're concerned, and it's going to be a no. And that's okay. But just to say it out loud, you're going to get these, and they might sting a little bit. Maybe they won't sting. Maybe, in fact, you actually give them the no. Maybe you tell them they're not a fit. But these people are always going to be a no. So that's, two modes we can be in. The third group is the depends group. And I'm not talking any kind of adult. Sorry, I'm not going to make that joke. It depends on what we're talking about, and it depends on timing, and it depends on how well you do your job. And let's just say that, like, wow, okay, we have a lot of influence, it turns out. This could be contingent upon when you catch somebody, how practiced you are. Did you practice or did you not? It could depend on, hey, did this person's dog get sick this morning and they're just in a bad place right now? And frankly, you know what? On another day of the week, they'd be a yes. Today, I'm just not getting in anything. In fact, I'm actually kind of grumpy. You're actually bothering me. I might actually even be kind of curt or rude with you. So why am I talking about this? Well, just accept that you're going to get no's. Accept that there are some people out there that are probably always going to say yes. And accept that you have a lot of influence amongst other factors, others do, on a significant component here. And so what do we do with this information? It's really, really important to grow this pie as much as possible. Because if I only talk to 3 people in the next 2 months, I'm potentially, let's assume this is an accurate diagram. It means I get 1 yes, 1 no, and then one's maybe going to be a coin flip. Okay. If I talked to 30, well, guess what? Now the pie is big enough and there's going to be a lot more room there. If I talk to 300, okay, there's a lot more room there. And so it's really, really important firstly to accept that there's going to be one of these 3 outcomes. It's really important to identify that you have influence over, a significant component of them. You also won't have influence over some component of them. In some ways, the worst outcome is that you actually don't know where someone fits, because what does that do? That sucks out the oxygen for you. That actually takes up space for you to be talking to more yeses and more depends. So I posit here, and one thing on my sales team is push people to a no. If you actually think they're trying to tell you a no, but they're afraid to, get them in that bucket so you can get closer to the yeses and the it depends groups. Okay. I think some people are afraid to push to a no because it feels like a failure. The most successful salesperson literally loses 70% of the time. Like a 30% success rate is actually really good in certain sales, like really good. Okay, 50% is 50%. If someone gets literally yes 50% of the time, they're not working hard enough. They should be literally, you should be talking to a ton more people to get it down to 25 or 30%. Because if you're literally a coin flip, go talk to 20 more people and close 10 more deals, right?
That's
so just be mindful.
Point.
Yeah.
The success rate, right? Like if you got 100% success rate, but you only talk to 1 person,
go talk to 1,000 more people and close 1,000 more deals. If that's the case, guess what? You don't actually have 100% success rate, but so at any rate, push people to a no. Accept that no's are good, and just know that you have a lot of influence and you want to grow this pie as fast as possible. Talk to anyone who will talk to you, to listen to you. Lastly, this is really the last thing, and then we'll finish with a checklist of things to do next. So this is cribbed from a venture capitalist that I follow, and I should probably credit it appropriately. I think it might be one of the Andreessen Horowitz guys, maybe. This is a concept that I love because it helps with thinking about scale. So the idea here is that if you can go from 0 customers to 20 customers, then you are capable of going from 20 customers to 200 customers. If you're able to get to 200 customers, you're able to get to 2,000 customers, and that is a real sizable business. Okay. Now, what does that mean? Like, we're just kind of throwing numbers up. So scaling is something really important. And I would argue here that scaling, this is because of the kind of the type of businesses we're thinking about today. This is less about what you should be doing. This is more about what you should not be doing. So for 0 to 20 customers up here at the top, these sales are founder-led. If you're not selling your own product, I don't know who is, okay? And so these are founder-led. You are the person that knows your stuff, your offering in and out. You're learning lessons along the way. You're learning what questions people answer. You're learning about what objections people throw up. You're learning why people, what keeps them from buying. You learn what other services they're using first, okay? You're learning all that stuff. Everything should feel manual because everything is manual. You don't have a process yet. You're figuring out what the process should be. One way to frame it is you're building the bicycle while riding it. You may in fact actually promise something or talk about a feature that doesn't exist, but geez, you're going to whip it up because it's going to be a great client when you do. And that's okay. And that's really, really okay. There's such a thing as overbuilding too soon before you actually have a customer base. It's really, really bad to invest in something that you actually don't know that people care about. That you only have so much. So this section, going from 0 to 20 customers, there's going to be a lot of experimentation along the way, and you're going to be the one doing it. So let's say we get to this 20 customer number. Well, then we're leveling up. Now we're thinking from 20 to 200. I'm going to 10x that. How am I going to do that? Well, the founder's probably still doing some selling, but now I'm probably going to start to draft others to do it on my behalf. And it might be others in my company. Maybe it's people referring. Maybe I start to think about hiring a salesperson or two. Here, you're starting to think about, hey, how do I refine a repeatable process? Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. You might even start to invest in some systems. So systems here could be something like, hey, how do I keep track of all of the accounts or the leads that I'm working? How do I keep track of the business cards I get at a trade show? What do I do with them? What process do I put them into? You're at this stage, once you're at more or less 20 customers, a couple dozen, you've shown some traction, but you're starting to figure out your sweet spot. hey, of these customers, who are the ones that like really, really, really are the ones I want to cater to, that are using the features the way I expect, or that are, are those that I actually enjoy working with, or those that I can actually, grow and do more with. So you're starting to like really figure out, you're starting to figure out, hey, actually that was a mistake. Oh, those guys weren't very good to work with. Oh, this is the sweet spot for me. I'm starting to figure out my psychographic, that whole deal. Finally, going from 200 to 2,000 customers, champagne problem. We feel really good about this. At this point, we might have a team or product-led sales. Okay, we may have well standardized what we're doing. You may have a system like a CRM, so literally like a Salesforce or HubSpot or something else to manage all your accounts, leads, communications. Maybe you got a Mailchimp thing going. You might have an ERP, resource planning for things in the warehouse somewhere. You may, in fact, actually start thinking about specializing and optimizing each stage of the sales process. You may be looking at, complicated ratios like your return on ad spend, that sort of thing. All of that is to say is like stuff down here, this kind of, let's call it kind of bigger business stuff, makes sense once you've done the hard work up here. And so what I want to say is what you don't want to do. Investing a ton in things like super complicated systems right here when you're not yet at a couple dozen customers, it's probably the wrong place to spend your time. It's probably signing up for some massive software platform that, with all these bells and whistles, when in fact you actually know all your customers by name. Think about how to use your resources wisely. If you're still building the bicycle while riding it, so to speak, having a 10-step drip campaign of email probably is going to be less efficient than you thinking about, okay, of these customers, who can I get in? Who have I not talked to this month? Just as a for example. Okay, so when you think about scaling, I think it's really easy to kind of go upscale, kind of upstream to larger and larger offerings and tools. The more you can limit that and just focus on the stuff that matters, that is to say, driving customer numbers and figuring out so you can start to standardize. The longer you can do that, the better and the more clear you're going to be on what the process should be. And so I encourage everybody who's anywhere toward the kind of the top of this here, focus on getting these customers to use your product, use your offering, kind of figure out how frequently they're reusing you. That's going to answer a lot of questions down here. You can't go the other way. But, investing in a bunch of systems isn't going to teach you, hey, what should our offering actually look like, or what the right what the appropriate amount of time for somebody to call you again for your service again should be, just as a for example.
And I would posit, knowing my viewers the way that I know them, is that a lot of times we focus on some of those big flashy bells and whistles because we're afraid to have those practice conversations, right? Like we're afraid to practice our elevator pitch or send a cold email or follow up with a former client or whatever the case is. And so instead we busy ourselves with busy work, or we call it research, and we busy ourselves with research of like, I want to be this big, and when I get there, I want to know what to do. Yes, but we're not going to get there if we don't spend the time practicing our pitch and actually speaking to people and actually delivering really good service to our people. So this is I really like that you're talking about this, because that is why I talk so much about confidence and building up your confidence so that we can knock down this fear that keeps us from actually moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, that's spot on, Candice. And one thing that actually that just jogged my memory is an old mentor of mine had a phrase that was super, super powerful. I think when we're thinking about how to scale and like where should we build for the bottleneck, was what he would always say. Build for the bottleneck. So what does that mean? Build for the bottleneck is do everything as basically and as just kind of like low rent as you can, to the point at which suddenly everything is getting stuck at one place. Oftentimes, when we start to invest in massive systems like a Salesforce or a Sage, SAP, ERP type, infrastructure, we're solving a problem that is not there yet. We're solving a problem that a software company is telling you will be there at some point if you hit all your benchmarks, right? If you build for the bottleneck, guess what? If I'm the founder and I'm getting to a point where, okay, I've got my process down. I've got customers, just rolling on in. I know exactly what the offering is. I get to the point where I literally cannot answer the phone enough. I've built for the bottleneck. I'm going to look for a phone solution, or I'm going to hire somebody to answer the phone and feed me leads appropriately.
It's
or
literally
pre-qualify.
is literally why I stopped paying Constant Contact, right? Like, why was I paying to be able to do this complicated email list when the number of people on my list, I can literally spend a day emailing all of them individually, right? And not having my messages kick out to spam. It's
and
real.
and save the cash too. So anyways, like I think one key thing is here is build for the bottleneck, and it'll become obvious to you at some point at which the business is suffering because you're stuck at one point. You won't know what that is until you get to a certain customer level, a certain amount of service offering. Anyway, so here we are at the end. So Candice and I wanted to provide a bit of a checklist and just some next steps of what to do, kind of what's the so what of all this stuff. So I've got four kind of items for everybody to think about here. So one, describe your ideal customer. Okay, and so this can be a number of, this can be more than one. You may actually have distinct processes for that. I encourage you to think about what is the psychographic rather than the demographic. What's the psychographic of your customer set now? And then crucially, the payoff is, how do you identify this customer? Where do you find that psychographic? How do you find more of that type of person who's going to buy your service? So describe your ideal customer. You should be able to answer this like pretty straightforward, in a couple sentences. Two, define your process. And so that can be firstly the first sale. And again, I argue that for many offerings, the first sale isn't actually someone signing a contract, paying you money. It's, yeah, I want to learn more. Yeah, I'm open to it. This could be a web form, could be spending time in a LinkedIn business group. It could be you answering questions on Quora. It could be any number of things, right? And that kind of gets some visibility, and that can then turn into a potential first sale. It's like, hey, I'd love to talk to you more. What key questions you need to have answered for your process? This is that qualifying thing. And then also, what other stages in your process? If somebody wants to work with you, is there a massive intake process? Is there do you need to apply for a certain type of loan? Like, what conditions need to be satisfied? If this isn't written out, if this isn't centralized, this hasn't been documented, you don't have a process that's very efficient. You have a process, but maybe it's up here. So define your process, make sure it's out there, and be able to, go back to it and think about, hey, is this actually efficient, or is there, could we actually move this portion of the process up earlier because it actually gets it out of the way? So defining your process is really important, and write it out. Define and practice your pitch, number 3. Practice, practice, practice. So, as a fun exercise, I think that innate desire, that brain, heart, stomach, genitals exercise, think about it. What does that mean for your business, and how does that actually manifest itself then? The elevator pitch, write it out and practice it. And again, I think doing so with your friends and family is less important than with others who are a little bit less invested in you emotionally. And then finally, the major selling points and benefits of your actual pitch. Write them out, practice it, challenge them, think about different ways to phrase it, and get automatic. Get the easy stuff on autopilot so you can focus on the hard stuff. And then finally, just think a little bit about scale. And so, where do you fit here? Are you 0 to 20, 20 to 200, 200 to 2,000? What are the systems you need to have today versus tomorrow? Tomorrow meaning not today. What's repeatable and what's custom? So what I mean here is, early on, everything's gonna be custom. If you've got one customer, everything's custom, right? You get to 2,000, you need to have a repeatable process. This is a spectrum, and you should think about, hey, how custom or how repeatable do you want to be? At 2,000, you should probably say no to some custom offerings. At 0 or 1 or 2, maybe you actually don't know what your offering is yet, and you should be flexible with it. Okay, so anyway, this is a fun exercise too, kind of once you've gotten this other stuff in place. But this should probably follow once we have a couple of customers. Anyway, that's my checklist. I encourage everybody to spend some time on this. If anybody has any kind of questions, comments, this is how to contact me directly. Tend to be pretty good on email. Candice, any kind of comments? Anything to add here?
So first, Paul, thank you so much. This was incredible. It is this was exactly what I wanted for us to talk about, and in such wonderful detail, right? People go to school to figure out sales, or have been doing it for years and years, but to give folks a 90-minute download, so that they know what they need to know. A lot of folks that I know and a lot of people in my community don't even know what they don't know yet. And that's what I that's what I like to be here to provide as a service, right? Like, you are starting your business, you are serving people, and there's some things coming up along the way that you don't even know are on the path, and I want to make sure you're prepared for them. So thank you so much. This, I think, is super helpful and will cause people to reevaluate. I can imagine I'm at the stage now where I know individually and specifically my clients, and I can imagine them rethinking how they talk about themselves and how they think about their ideal client. So it's absolutely perfect. So thank you so much for your time and your expertise and your energy. Like, I love it. I love it. Say that again.
Well, you're welcome. You're welcome. It was a lot of fun. Appreciate it. It's great to connect with you. If anybody has any kind of questions, comments, wants to chat briefly, feel free to reach out. Happy to talk to anybody that's in Candice's circle. So best of luck to everybody.
I love it. I love it. So if you are watching this and you're in the Launch with Confidence group on Facebook, you know what we do there. If you are watching this on another platform and you're not yet in the Launch with Confidence group, do head over to that group. I'm going to figure out where to put it in the bio. Join us over there. That is where we're having this conversation for small business owners who are, anywhere in the first 1 to 2 years of their business, still trying to figure out what their process is and what, in some cases, what their signature product is, right? So that they can focus and work on these sales strategies that Paul just mentioned. So easy, yes. Come over to the Launch with Confidence group and join the conversation there, ask your questions, and get the support that you need so that you can do good, right, with your passion project, so that you can build your business and actually build revenue for your business. I want to make sure that everybody who is in business is actually building revenue, because a business with no revenue, like, is it a business? I would say no, right? It's an expensive hobby. So let's work on our businesses and make sure that we're bringing in the revenue and the income that we deserve so that we can do more, right? So with that, Paul, thank you again. Thank you so much. And again, if you haven't already joined our Facebook group, just search for it, Launch with Confidence, and I will see you there. Until next time, have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.